Tanager is here for children, teens, young adults, and families as they navigate the many stressors of the world today. Tanager inspires, empowers, and heals by providing tools and support needed to navigate the hardships of life and overcome obstacles. Our expertise and specialty trainings offer a wide range of approaches, and we'll join alongside you to create solutions to enhance your wellness. We are here for you and your family. Tanager, inspire, empower, heal.
Tanager and the Meraki Institute of Learning proudly present Together We Rise,
a series based on the Rise, Wellness, and Resilience framework.
In times of uncertainty and adversity, it is easy to feel overwhelmed and disheartened.
Amidst the challenges our community may face,
let us never lose sight of the strength and resilience that also resides in our neighborhoods.
This series highlights the vital role each of us have in nurturing that resilience.
That community impact.
The power and influence each of us have to show up in spaces
with empathy,
openness,
and kindness.
Because it is in this collective that connections grow stronger,
our compassion shines brighter,
and our spirit rises even higher.
It is together
that we rise.
Welcome back for another episode of Together We Rise. Here with you today are your co-hosts Tanya,
Opara,
and I'm super excited to be able to introduce our guest, Dara. Dara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Dara Schmidt, and I'm the director of the Cedar Rapids Public Library, and I am also a mom to 3 young kids, and I'm very fortunate that my parents live in this community as well. So I am an active community member, family member, and happy to be here.
So we talked a little bit before today about the importance of community wellness, resilience, even your own why, and the importance of servant leadership, even in what you do in the library, but in the greater scope of the community. Tell us a little bit about the importance of all that.
I think it's the literal only thing you can do if you want to be successful, because you have got to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others, and we need to take care of others so that we can have a whole community that supports each other.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. Opara, you talk a lot, especially in our agency, about that servant leadership mind, and even just how we approach the work to make that ripple effect. Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, understanding the roles libraries play in a community, and we've had so many conversations about just how really libraries see a little bit of everything. Yes. And how they really are a hub of in the community, and also are real conveyors of what needs are. And I'm just curious in your work and what you've seen. I know you're in the midst of a big expansion project, but hopefully you'll talk to us about that too.
Sure.
Is what have you seen in your time and evolution about what the needs in the community have been?
That's a great question. It's really interesting because I think it ebbs and flows, but human service support is one of the biggest needs, and that has changed significantly, certainly over my 10 years in Cedar Rapids, but over my 20 plus years in librarianship, right, where it is just when you are hurting and you're confused and you don't know where else to go, and maybe you're not already hooked up with direct community services, the library is a safe and friendly place. And the people who work there are almost to a one that servant leadership model, where it's like, maybe I don't know what the right answer is. Maybe I don't know what I can do for you, but I'm gonna help you figure it out. And at the very least, we can get you hooked up with some of those supportive services, or maybe all you need is just somebody to be nice to you today. And we were having a conversation where I gave this example of there was a woman really early in my career who was the youth services supervisor for all of Los Angeles County libraries. And she would say to us over and over again, what if you could be the best thing that happened to somebody today? And that has sat with me like my entire career, but what if you could be?
Yeah.
Because we all know what it's like to have this is the worst thing that happened to you today. But we don't know where kids or adults, for that matter, are coming from, what the rest of their day has been like. But if we can just be that smile, that sense of immediate gratitude, you need a book, you need a computer, you need whatever it is you need, I can help you with that. And maybe you can have a good thing, and then we can go on from there. I think everybody's hurting. on different levels. Like the last few years have been really, really hard for people. There was a CDC report from less than a year ago that talked about loneliness is the next great American epidemic. And I think libraries have been a place where you can get away from your loneliness, even if just for a few minutes. You can be sitting by yourself in a chair, reading a book in the library without interacting with other people, but you're not alone. And that's really important.
It is, libraries to me are just this metaphor of so many things, right? Between like education and resources are power. They allow you to break barriers. It's the inclusivity, the sense of belonging, a safe place. Like all of these things that center around wellness and resilience, like that is the existence of libraries to offer to a community, like this energy that we want to be in everybody's hearts.
Right. And we want to be welcoming to everybody. And so it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, what you believe, like you have a place with us. And belonging, I think, is the core of wellness, right? You've got to belong somewhere. And I think that's what most of us do our entire adult life, is try to figure out where that is. And hopefully you get there. By the time you're 50, I don't know, but like hopefully you get there at some point where you feel like you know where your place is in the world. And I really take a lot of pride in that. I think libraries can help people do that, whether it's through the materials or just through the interactions or the programs, like all of those different things we do. Like maybe you can help find your sense of self.
What I think metaphorically libraries represent is a servant leader, right? Showing up in a place, entering super self-aware in order to give an experience to someone else that creates that sense of inclusion and belonging. But in order to have that awareness, we have to check ourselves sometimes. You talk a lot about our own bias, how our own life experiences come into play.
It's interesting because the way we look at libraries is so different than when I was a young person, and libraries were not as welcoming, or that was not a part of it. You didn't want to have elements, right? I grew up in Chicago. You didn't want to have elements in the libraries, right? And I feel like you have been such at the forefront of saying, no, we need to welcome people in. I'm wondering, like in your own leadership, how did you build that culture, not just within the library, but also all the stakeholders who also have a vested interest in the library being successful? That's a big lift culturally.
It is, but I think people want to be there. And maybe they don't realize it. And so if you give them that opportunity to go, like, again, what if we could be the best thing that happened to somebody? Like, nobody wants to be the worst thing that happened to somebody. And so when you can start from that mentality, then you start having other conversations about, but what if? And instead of your what if being like, what if everybody steals the books and we never have them anymore? What if you get to have a celebration in the library and these are things that other people, like, that you can't do anyplace else? Or what if we don't have fines and fees and we just trust people because we work on an honor system anyway? So why aren't we giving people the opportunity to be at their best? And what if they actually surprise us with great things instead of hard
The fee
things?
conversation was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, because you were on the board when that happened,
that's
right?
an interesting conversation, and that's so different. But when you think about equity, and we think about those who may not have financial means in our community, it's a game changer. Because that would stop people from coming back to get those services and to be a part of that, of the library in the community.
And I think it's hard to look at yourselves sometimes and go, that's not good, right? I wish I could be better, whether it's personal or institutional. And that was one of those when we started talking about it, because it was definitely a trend that was happening nationally that we were definitely not on the cutting edge of. We don't think we're on the backside of it either. Like we were, kind of middle of the road, and we have a tendency in Cedar Rapids and in the Metro Library Network to be a little bit more cutting edge on things, but that one was a hard one for people. But when we did the research, because librarians really love research, and we did some mapping about who our people were without, no names, no like direct addresses or anything like that, but we could see where our people who were blocked from the library were. And of course, it was in the lowest income community. It was more minority communities than white communities. And it's just like, ooh.
So the data was
What are
there.
we doing? What are we doing? And is this what we're trying to do? Because if this is what we want to do as an institution, we've got some big problems as an institution. If what we say is we want people to be welcome, but our policies are showing that actually we're doing things that are excluding people, even though that's not our intention, then we better address that. And that was, I would say we had board members and council members who at that time were just a little like, oh, but I'm not sure. Like, I want to believe you and I want to go with it, but what if? Their what if was, what if people never bring these books back? Then what are we going to do? And it's just like, we don't actually believe it's the money that makes people want to bring them back. We believe that it's because they're part of the honor system. And evidence was absolutely showing that it was why people weren't coming back when they had a fine or a fee that they couldn't pay. And so we wiped everything out. We started everybody from fresh. And in Cedar Rapids' budget, we're at around a $7 million budget annually, and that was $100,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's not easy to just go, oh, let's just take that out. But it also was something that our city was supportive of, as I know Marion and Hiawatha were as well, to go, yeah, if that's what you're getting from it, and these are how many people you're excluding from this public service, this is not where we want to make the money. And it was a beautiful thing to be a part of. And it's been, 4 years now? It's been a while now, and it has absolutely, everything we thought would be true has been true. More people are coming back to our libraries. More people are utilizing the services. We don't have any higher loss rates than we did before. And actually, we have people, it's 5 days later as a general return, but that's it.
Yeah.
Everything is coming back, and those things are coming back within a month, where before they would linger on, and if they lingered on, you knew we're never going to get them back.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's a mindset.
Yes.
Right, and it's a shift for us, especially in kind of westernized culture where we see punishment and consequences and fear-based approaches to motivate people to do the quote-unquote right thing. But we are such this fear-driven society of that I have to scare you so much into compliance that we miss all the true heart and soul of what people need to be well.
Has that ever actually worked for you?
No.
Because it's never worked for me. You can't scare me into compliance. You can't scare my kids into compliance. Trust me, as 3 under 2, we tried everything sometimes, and it turns out fear of punishment is not a great motivator, but having high expectations for people and saying, I believe in you, I believe you can do this, and then having opportunities for vulnerability, and it's man, so you screwed up. Everybody screws up. Here's how we fix it. Here's how we learn from that, and doing that together, either as an institution or as a family or whatever it is. These things overlap in work and home. And again, if it doesn't work for your kids, why would you think it's going to work for the whole community?
Yeah.
Going back to the sense of belonging, because also these conversations I've had in our community around the unhoused, right? And the library is very central to our community, directly across the street in Green Squirrel Park, and we know that we have so many people who have needs, but yet you continue to create an environment where people, first of all, have an awareness that this is something we have to tackle as a community, and that people belong, that it is still their library, that it's not just those people who are living in the park. I'm wondering how you've been able to do that and what those conversations have been like with other leaders in the community, because this is I think the library has brought a lot of awareness to this in a different way than maybe wouldn't have been there before.
I like to say a library is a true reflection of its community, and sometimes that's the things you want to see, and sometimes that's the things you don't want to see. But if we're doing a good job, you're seeing both sides of your community there. And so people being unhoused makes people uncomfortable. And sometimes it's something that they don't want to see, but especially our downtown library, it's big and bright and open and there's lots of windows, and so you can't not see it. And so now we've got to talk about it. And I over my time have had people call and complain and say I can't believe that I had to take my child past those people on the way in. And it's oh, I'm sorry, was there a behavior problem? Did something happen? Because if something happened, that's absolutely our responsibility to address any behavior issues, regardless of who initiates those. But people existing is definitely something that you should have a conversation with your kids about. Like, that's okay. And so where is that line? And for us, it's absolutely behavior based, right? In a public space, there are some things that are okay and some things that are not okay. And if you're confused about what those are, we're going to work with you. We're going to give you every opportunity to succeed. And you can be an unpleasant jerk whether you have a house or not have a house, right? And so that's not a prerequisite, I assure you, but it is definitely something where we do see a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness are also experiencing mental health issues or substance abuse issues, or there's the Venn diagrams overlap, as we like to say in libraries. And so, sometimes you got to have a little bit more patience. Sometimes you got to give people a few more chances to try a little bit harder. And if they can't, well, then maybe now is not the right time, but you're welcome once those things are addressed. And having those conversations with people, whether it's in leadership or just your average patron, to say, hey, people are okay here. Yeah. Behaviors are not. And so you will always be welcome, but if you can't get this under control, you got to go fix that, and then you can come back. And those are, it's challenging, because sometimes, again, you see things in a public place that maybe you wish you hadn't seen, right? Somebody is getting mad at somebody else, or there's a fight, or, we do have people, especially during the coldest months of the year, where if you're in shelter together, like overnight, like you're in close quarters, and maybe you're not getting along there, and then you come to the library and maybe you're not getting along there, and so you raise your voice, and nobody wants to have to be a part of that. But if it happens, it's addressed and handled. So, you can't prevent people from getting mad at each other in the grocery store. You can't necessarily prevent it at the library either, but having those honest conversations about, like, look, we're going to do the best we can, but can we solve all of society's issues so that they don't happen in a public library? No, we cannot.
And that's not the majority of the experience.
No.
I think this is part of ourselves as humans challenging our bias, that we think, oh, because you're homeless means you're going to be violent or you're going to be unsafe, which isn't true.
And in fact, we ran the data this morning before I came here, and the negative interactions we have, we track behavioral issues, is 0.05%.
Yes.
People coming into the library, right? And so we have literally hundreds of thousands of people every year and less than 200 incidents every year. It's just, bad things tend to be the things that we remember, but that's another way to challenge yourself in resilience. Like, okay, this bad thing happened, can I let it go? And then try to remember the positive things that happen. And that's a challenge. Like, that's hard for everybody. The bad things stick with you, but what if the good things did?
Yeah, our brains are oriented sometimes to think of the negative or to see the negative. I think bigger than that, you bring up a point of, I bring my kiddos to the library as well, and you see homelessness, you see diversity, which is a beautiful thing because it represents our communities. It represents the larger world. And my kiddo, right at the time, was 6 and said, like, oh, Mom, like, why does he have a shopping cart with him outside the library? And we had a wonderful conversation about what it means to be more homeless and transient and what their needs are. And the beautiful part of the story, which is not that this person was homeless, but that they had a place to go, that they matter in this world, that they could be seen, that they have some resources, and how we're all responsible for that. And I think that's what the library represents.
I hope so.
Yeah.
If we do, we're doing our job, right?
Yes.
It's really one of the few places that is like truly public for everybody.
Yes.
Every socioeconomic level. It's truly one of those places. Because you're about to do a big expansion in the middle of something else. So you're taking a little bit of what you've done at the downtown library, you kind of reimagining the west side. Can you just talk about the why behind that and what you're hoping to bring to that community?
First, it's very practical why. The Ladd Library is in a rental space.
Got it.
The lease is gonna go up in 2027, and so, like, from a strictly, like, just operational perspective, how long do you keep paying rent on something when you really need to have a permanent solution? That library has been there since 2013 and is so well utilized. Like, we don't need to prove that we need a West Side library, but we need to think about what we want long term. And so there was a whole process with the city and looking at different neighborhoods, and they did a lot of research into, like, Westdale neighborhood needs and that whole kind of regional needs. And there were two things that kept coming up, and they were like community space and green space. What if we did more community space in the library? What if we could build a park and a library together? And the answer was yes, like this is a big community need. And so that, you talk about stakeholder management, you talk about working, like there were years of conversations before we moved forward in that, because I think we need something really special on the West Side. And when you talk about dignity and treating people well, we have our highest populations of immigrants and refugees on the West Side. We see that population in the Ladd Library all of the time. It's nice, like it's not a bad library, but it's not very bright and it's not very open. It definitely is not providing everything it could because we're out of space. We don't have any other opportunity to grow or change. And so this new facility is being designed with that in mind, because when you do things in neutral tones and colors, that's universal. And when you have open windows to the outdoors and to nature, that's universal. And so you're trying to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, even if maybe you don't understand all of the details of the cultural norms that they're coming from. You can make sure that it's bright and open and airy, and it just feels like a place you want to be. And this is my first time in my career that I've been through like a design process like that. It's really cool. It's really fascinating. It's going to be so pretty, but it's also going to have more than double the space for books.
Wow.
Because we really like books too, and having opportunities for people to continually educate themselves and to learn new things, or just sometimes the real world is a terrible place. So what if you could escape from it for a little while with a good book? So, all of those things are part of it.
It's so interesting that you also wanted the park piece, being able to see nature from the building and what that does for your holistic health. That's so powerful.
You take a deep breath out there, right? Especially when you look at the Westdale neighborhood. Everything is concrete. Everything is, buildings and commercial spaces. And so when you think about that balance of being able to like just get out there and run around and enjoy, it is also a selfish thing, because you're going to behave a lot better in the library if you can get your energy out of that park and then come in and talk to us and play with us, right? There is the potential that this could be the 13th net zero library in the entire United States. That, we're really thinking about long-term wellness and resilience for a community. And so you're going to give them something great, but it shouldn't take away from the community's health by having an extra building there that's, zapping a lot of resources. That we're making sure that if there are, other unfortunate natural disasters, that we've got places for people to go and be safe, and that we've got battery backups or generators, and so we can run community space and be able to offer resources. And back to your earlier question about like what do you see in libraries that you didn't used to, well, that's one of them. Like, man, do we know how to like respond to a natural disaster around here. And having that space, there's nothing like that on the West Side. We've got a few things like that downtown, but it is something that you have to think really holistically about all of the aspects of what community resilience looks like in planning a public building.
Yeah. One of the unique things that I remember you saying to me prior to this is hearing people's stories, hearing people's voices, collaborating. How do you, continue to foster this in a way that brings people to you?
Sometimes the voices you want to hear the most are the people who either haven't been asked, or they don't have enough dignity and worth to respond because they don't think it's their answer that you're looking for. And so thinking really creatively about how to get public input, like, we have your normal open houses and places where people can come and talk, or we've done a lot of things online. We've translated into multiple languages to make sure we're getting feedback. The Parks Department has done a great job with like having activities, and it's just like, oh, can we bring some surveys out there? But my favorite one, which was very, very creative, and I had nothing to do with it, it was my team, but we do a gingerbread house contest every year at the library. And this year it was the park and the library and the library and the park. And so what if you could create your dream, what would that be like to have these things together? And so it's like, one thing that came from that is so many people thought ice skating rink was going to be really cool, right? And so the sports fields will have the opportunity to be ice skating in the winter because of that feedback process. And so, you know, it's being really creative and not necessarily going with the standard, like, oh, let's do things the same way we've always done them, because we won't get the right answers.
Yeah.
But how do you center yourself? How do you approach each day?
Today, I will tell you that I have a screaming goat in my office. It's like a little guy this big, and sometimes you just need a moment, and so he screams. Okay. And then you can walk away. I think, you know, being able to laugh about things is really important, and knowing our bodies react before our mind does, especially in times of stress. And so learning who you are and to feel those feelings and to go, ooh, okay, I didn't think this was bothering me so much, but it is. I can feel myself getting tense. I can feel the shoulders like being, you know, take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, like think about where you are. And once you've done that, get curious about why you reacted that way, because then perhaps you can deal with the core of the anxiety or the stress or whatever it is. Some days it's easier than others, right? Some days it's chocolate, and that's an answer too. Not every day, but I think, you know, I think it's knowing yourself well enough to know what you need to have those moments of relaxation.
You said curious. I make myself be curious, or I, you know, choose to be curious. And you kind of talked about this philosophy with your staff too, approaching patrons, you know, if they're frustrated or yelling, like, just be curious first, you know,
right?
Like, and I think that could go a long way to community wellness overall, and community kindness, community compassion is just that pausing and being curious. How do you practice that?
You know, that comes from parenting. And my husband and I talk about it all the time, like, man, if we will have any sense of being successful parents, it's that we'll have curious kids. And like that just innate ability to have questions and to explore them and go through, like, I don't know how to do it, but I hope that I'm modeling it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to teach it, but I hope that I'm modeling it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's I think what we're trying to do. And you're right. Won't that provide dignity for other people if you're curious about who they are and what's going on? Won't that provide an opportunity for us to learn and support each other as a community if you just have a moment to get curious?
Yeah, or Apar, you talk a lot, just there are multiple truths in every scenario.
Absolutely. Different ways of looking at things.
Different way
Absolutely.
of looking at things. Well, Dara, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I had no doubt that this segment would offer all of the audience so much to walk away with. Thank you for what you do for this community, for creating such a wonderful space and a sense of belonging for so many. I know my experience at the library has been nothing but one where I walk away feeling like, oh, this is the representation of what we want, to create a community centered around wellness, a community centered around connection, a community centered around what it means to be a community. Dara, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Next time on Together We Rise.
You want to show up in the world in a way that's authentic to who you are. And part of that then is finding the right balance of being able to kind of own your power and who you are, and not come off in a way that suggests you think you're more than what you should be.
Power in our society feels like something different than sometimes what it actually is, right? Like power sometimes feels like somebody exerting something over you, but really the power is something that happens between people, right? That influence happens between people.
No matter the challenges you and your family face, Tanager is here for you. We'll meet you wherever you are in your journey, and together define a path to reach your goals. Together we rise.
Thank you for joining us today and for spending time with us. We hope today's segment offered hope and inspiration. Today's series brought to you by Tanager and the Meraki Institute of Learning. For more information, please visit our website at www.tanagerplace.org.